When I was in the Army, we had a saying, aim small, miss small. That applies directly to rental property investing. If you are extremely specific about the type of deal that you want, the type that's going to give you the best return and provide you the lifestyle that you're after, then you're probably going to get a lot of traction and really make progress toward your goals. The opposite mentality is the spray and pray mentality, where you've got a general target and you just kind of shoot all your ammo in that direction and just hope that you hit something. A lot of people do that with real estate investing. They go out and they just say, I'm looking for a great deal, whatever that is, a great deal. It could be in all different areas, could be all different types of properties. And those type of people typically don't make a lot of progress toward their goals that they're after, or maybe they don't even have specific goals that they've specified. In this video, I want to describe the exact features that I think lead to a great rental property. So if you're just getting started, you can apply this and really narrow down what a great rental property is to you so you can make much quicker progress toward your goal. If you're just getting started in rental property investing, then today's video is perfect for you. I'm going to cover the top 5 features that I feel lead to a great rental property. Now, for every one of these rules that I'm going to go over, there is a counter argument. I know somebody out there has done a deal that violates one or all of these rules and it turned out okay. I do deals all the time that violate these rules. But what this gives you is a set of features that can act as a guide so that you can get super specific on the type of deal that you're targeting. I would never say walk away from a great deal that might violate one of these rules. You're never going to find the exact perfect deal, but if that's what you're shooting for, you're aiming small, you might miss small and it might violate one of these rules, but it might still be a great deal. This is just what you want to target, especially in the beginning, and you're gonna come up with much better deals. So let's jump right in. The first rule that I recommend you follow when you're targeting a rental property is to keep things basic. So if you are a retail buyer and you're going out looking to buy a house for your family to move into, you might be attracted to all of these fancy features. You might want a pool, or you might be attracted to a house with a ton of landscaping that, it might take a lot to maintain, but it looks really beautiful. Or some high-end appliances that, might require more maintenance than just a typical appliance, and it might be more costly to replace a part, but it gives you some sort of luxurious experience, or it does something that a basic appliance can't do. That's great if you're a retail buyer. If you are a landlord, however, I would highly recommend you target the most basic properties, ones that are very low maintenance, very little landscaping, no pool. The appliances are basic appliances, if you even need to put the appliances in, because those are always more maintenance intensive. And just keep everything as basic as possible in a nice working class area. The second rule that I recommend is sort of a caveat onto the first, but it's targeting properties with no basements. Now, some people disagree with this, and if you live in the South, it's a non-factor because you probably don't have basements anyway. But up north, people love their basements. And as a flipper, when I was flipping a lot of properties, we did a ton of properties with basements because when we went to sell them, buyers wanted the basements. However, basements are a problem. They typically always leak at some point. When I was flipping a lot of properties, I would lay awake at night when we'd have a big storm here in the Chicagoland area, and I would just think about all the properties that were probably flooding right at that point. And by the way, that always happens on the properties that are finished and sitting on the market. It can never happen on a property that you're just about to start the rehab on. It's always got to be the ones that are done, and you got to rip everything out and then put stuff back in. So as a rental property owner, I've owned a lot of properties with no basements. And when it rains, I don't care because I know that property's most likely not gonna flood unless we have like this 100-year rain that just floods every house, regardless of whether you have a basement, but that's atypical. So I always target properties with no basements. Some of my rentals have basements because you will come across great deals with basements, and it still makes sense to purchase those properties. But the other aspect of basements is that tenants typically store a bunch of crap down there, or they let a family member or a friend move into this open space that nobody's using, and then you've got a whole bunch of extra people living in this house. So I always avoid rental properties with basements. The third rule that I recommend when targeting a rental property is to buy a property that is 1960s or newer. Why do I recommend that? The time involved and the rehab involved on a property that's built prior to 1960 and typically one that's built newer than 1960 is exponentially different. The reason for this is because the mechanicals, the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, typically installed after the 1960s meets today's standards. You can get away with using that. You don't have to dig into the walls and change out all the plumbing, all the electrical, all the HVAC. You might have to update certain components of it, but when you get into properties that are older than 1960, now you're dealing with really outdated mechanicals, and typically you're gonna have to open up the walls, you're gonna have to replace all the mechanicals, you're gonna have to re-insulate, re-drywall, repaint, and then you start the rehab that you otherwise would have done on a newer property where you're just going surface level renovations, flooring, cabinets, maybe paint, that type of stuff. So it's exponentially more costly, and it takes much more time once you start digging into the mechanicals on an older house. Before I get into the fourth rule, if you're getting value out of this, please give me a thumbs up so I know. Also, hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when other videos like this come out. I release videos on a weekly basis. The fourth rule that I recommend when buying a rental property is to buy in very landlord-friendly areas. So what do I mean by landlord-friendly? Well, I can tell you areas that aren't landlord-friendly. Areas like California, or areas like I used to invest in Chicago. Policymakers in these areas say they need more housing. They say there's a shortage of housing, but then at the same time, they make it extremely difficult for landlords, for rental property investors to purchase properties. They make it really hard to renovate the properties, and then they make it even more difficult to rent the properties because of all the bureaucracy and all the rules that are in place around it. And they just keep adding more and more. So there's three things that I think lead to a very landlord-friendly area. Number one, it's low bureaucracy. So you're not gonna have to go through miles and miles of red tape to get a deal done. You can find a deal, you can renovate the deal, and you can rent it out fairly seamlessly. The second thing is gonna be low taxes. You're not gonna be taxed like crazy so that you can never make any cash flow. And even if you make a little bit of cash flow, next year the taxes go up even more, and then that cash flow is gone. And the third thing is that they don't make it almost impossible to evict somebody that's not paying you. So when a tenant stops paying you, you should be able to ask them to leave. Now, I'm not saying you should kick them out day one. There should be a process around it, but they shouldn't be able to live in the house for 6 months, 9 months, a year more when they've stopped paying rent. You have to pay rent to stay in a property, right? So certain states, certain municipalities make it much easier to evict non-paying tenants than other areas. So you want to pay attention and learn the eviction laws in the area that you're investing. Final component that leads to a great rental property is what I like to call the Holy Grail of rental property investing. So a lot of people will invest for either cash flow or appreciation, right? So typically, most people have a mindset of one or the other. A lot of people will just take cash flow and they know they're upside down on a property. They don't care about the appreciation. They just are addicted to that money coming in on a monthly basis. They don't care about anything else. Other people will have negative cash flow and they just focus and pray for that appreciation to happen over time. I think the Holy Grail is to meld these two together, and there's areas that I think you can buy for both cash flow and appreciation. If you can find that, that is the perfect rental property because you're paid on a monthly basis you're paid cash flow, and at the same time, that investment keeps increasing in value. So how do you find this type of area? It's not going to be intuitive, especially if you're just starting out. You don't want to target areas that are already the place to live, right? Because those places have already appreciated. They might appreciate some more, but that's speculation, right? What I target is the area that's on its way up. Jobs year over year are increasing. The population is increasing. There's new amenities in the town, in that area, that are continuing to build. And there might still be some negative aspects that you're dealing with, which are keeping prices low, but you see those declining and the positive aspects inclining. So these areas are still going to be affordable compared to other surrounding areas, but they're on their way up. In those areas, they're very affordable, so you're gonna get the cash flow, but you're also, over time, when you hold these properties, you're gonna gain that appreciation as well. Sitting here talking to a camera, I start to wonder after a while if what I'm saying is resonating with the viewers. So if you could do me a huge favor and comment below, what was the most important aspect that you got out of this video? What was the component that you feel makes the most sense that you're gonna go out and implement? Because then I know that, number one, it's resonating, and number two, I can start to build more videos around those specific aspects. If you did enjoy this video and you want to continue the conversation with other rental property investors who are part of this community, the best way to do that is to go over to Facebook and join the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. There's great conversation that happens there. There's a lot of questions that are answered there. So definitely check that out, and I will see you in the next video.